Alright guys, it's your boy Forever One Wheel. Today we are going to be talking about how to set up your Dyna for stunts. And I'm going to try to make this as in-depth as possible because it seems like I get a lot of questions and a lot of people have, a lot of questions or are just generally curious about what people have done to their bikes, right? So I'm going to try to go from early model Dyna to late model Dyna, and then as far as the parts of what you want to do, your budget. Basically, I'm going to try to outline every single little thing that we possibly can to help you decide what you want on your bike. That being said, whether you have an early model Dyna or a late model Dyna, personally, I don't think it really matters. There's a lot of people that will swear by the later model Dynas. There's a lot of people that'll swear by the early model Dynas. Actually, I think there's a lot more people that prefer the early model Dynas compared to the later model Dynas like myself here. And the differences being early model Dyna is a lot more smaller. It's like it's got a shorter wheelbase, so it's basically like a Sportster. It's just a lot lighter. It's also got a Timken bearing bottom end in it in the motor, which definitely means it's a lot more solid. It's a 5-speed. A lot of people say that the 5-speed trannies are better for wheelies. I haven't really found too much of a difference so far compared to wheeling the Bagger, but I also haven't wheelied the Bagger way too much to really give an extensive review. And they're just lighter in general. They're smaller, they're a lighter bike compared to the later model Dyna like mine. For example, later model Dyna has a bigger tank on it. The wheelbase on it is a little bit longer. You got 49mm forks in the front now, which definitely adds weight compared to the 39mm forks. Whether you have either or, it doesn't matter. Both of them can be wheelied, and there's plenty of people out there that are wheeling both early models and late models, so it doesn't matter. In my opinion, if you know how to wheelie a bike, you're going to learn how to wheelie it, plain and simple. As the old saying goes, a good carpenter doesn't blame his tools. That being said, there is some things that will help you wheelie a Dyna a lot better. Mind you, do you need to do every single little thing that I'm about to show you? Absolutely not. There's guys out there that are pros that wheelie, completely stock Dynas, and just for shits and giggles you'll see the odd guy do it every now and then when they get a new bike that's all still brothered out. They'll show you that it's possible, right? And those people have a lot of skill. Could a beginner wheelie a Dyna like that? Probably not. We're going to start by talking about the bare minimum of what you need to wheelie a Dyna. So first and foremost, when you do buy a stunt bike, you want to make sure that you buy a Dyna that has aluminum rims, okay? Because I've seen guys still wheeling with spoked rims, but over time, those are literally just going to fold and buckle on you, and it's just not going to be a fun time. So it's just easier to get a bike with aluminum rims. That way, you don't have to worry about things like that. Personally, I think that's a big one, because I don't want to come down off a wheelie and have my tire fold up on me or anything like that, right? After you got a bike with aluminum rims, that's out of the way. The next thing you're gonna really need to focus on is, at the bare minimum, this is like if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend a shit ton of money but you want to wheelie your Harley, you're gonna have to do suspension and a handlebar setup. So basically, the most important thing on a Harley, I would say, is honestly suspension. Suspension makes night and day difference on these. Upgrading your suspension from the shitty stock Harley stuff is just necessary, because the fronts usually come way too soft. Like, you're gonna bottom those out and probably cause more damage to your bike over time, right? So it's always good to upgrade the suspension on the front and the back. So typically what a lot of people run, now this depends on your budget, is you could do what I did when I first started and go gold valve emulators with springs from Race Tech, which are pretty cheap. They'll get you by for honestly forever if you want to. But I will say that a cartridge setup is superior. If you want to up the price a little bit, you could go RWD cartridge, you could go Legend cartridge like myself. Öhlins, I know Big Bear Choppers make some really good Öhlins suspension, like their 32 millimeter, or you could go with the Nix 22, right? So that's going to be like the highest tier right there. And then I'd say even higher than that is if you want to just go completely inverted forks. Now, do you need to go inverted forks? No, you don't have to. That's just like basically if you got the money and you want to spend it and you don't give a fuck, then by all means, whatever tickles your fancy, right? I spent the bulk of my money on the front suspension because that's the one that's always experiencing the most action coming down off wheelies and whatnot. So I wanted a nice cartridge setup. So I went with Legends. Now, that being said, it is a great cartridge setup, but if I had the extra money at the time, I probably would have went Öhlins, just because Öhlins is top tier. I don't really know the difference between Öhlins and Legends, but I'm sure Big Bear Choppers or somebody out there has a video explaining on all the internals and how much superior Öhlins is compared to Legends. But my Legends cartridge does well for what I needed to do. So moving back to the rears. Now your boy here, he's on a budget. So if you want to go higher suspension in the back for not a crazy cost, Drag Specialties 13-inch suspension is where it's at. I got the heavy duty and it works just fine for what I do. I adjusted it to 13.5, works great, no problems. Been running this for like 4 seasons now, does the job. As once again, we could go higher tier than that, right? So you could go RWD, you could go progressive, you could go Legend rear piggyback shocks, you could go Öhlins piggyback shocks. The list just continues, right? And that's just, if you know anything about motorcycles and motorcycle parts, you know that the order that I'm explaining it is from least to greatest. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty expensive the higher up you go, right? Is it worth it for the money? I can't really tell you because I'm not sure what those shocks feel like, but I can tell you this is what works for me and I wheelie just fine on it. That's just some examples of rear suspension you could go with. Typically a lot of guys run 13-inch to 15-inch, but mostly it's 13 to 14. I've seen the odd guy run a 15-inch though, if they want that bigger gap in the back and whatnot. After suspension is taken care of, you want to go with riser and bar setup. So this is a very, very, very asked question. I know this because I've asked a million people a million times what their riser and bar combo is, and people have asked me a bunch of times what my riser and bar combo is. And to tell you the truth, when it comes to this, it's all personal preference. You'll see a lot of guys, for example, like the unknown industry guys, they like to rock a tall setup. Those guys are rocking, you know, that Cali style, club style look, right? And they do all their stunts just fine on that, you know what I mean? Versus if you look at the heavy hitters coming out of, let's see, Phoenix, Arizona, like Dom 829 and all those boys basically that ride with Cruzy originals and whatnot. A lot of them swear by lower riser setup with pullback. That's more my style personally. I would agree with them because it does make a difference in my eyes. Notice like this setup here for drifting and stuff like that, it's not too tall, doesn't feel awkward. You know what I mean? Especially for wheelies too, that little bit of pullback there really helps with feeling comfortable when you're sitting back in a wheelie, right? Because for me personally, like on a late model bike, I think pullback is great because it's a bigger bike. If I had an early model Dyna, I would definitely rock a straight riser because then I would feel too cramped with a pullback on an early model because early models are a lot smaller of a bike compared to the late model. Because I've sat on a couple of my buddies' early models and they had straight risers on and it still felt like my arms were pretty tucked in, you know what I mean? And it's all just personal preference and what feels comfortable for you, honestly. Like, I could ramble on about what bar setup to get, but at the end of the day, like, it's basically what you like best and what you see fit. Even the East Coastin' boys, those guys are running like 8-inch thrash and risers with a mid-bend bar, I think. And that's still, you know, a pretty tall setup as well. And that's what's comfortable for them, and they still kill it on a bike. It's basically about finding what's comfortable for you. You know what I mean? And this is what works for me personally on my bike so far is 6.5 pullback riser with ODI Podium V-twin bar. I think it's like 3.5 rise. I don't know, it's different on a lot of websites. Some websites say 3.7, others say 3.5. But this setup right here is actually the best setup I've ever ridden. I like it a lot. I think it looks clean. I like that moto bar look because it's a lot beefier here in the middle, and then it tapers down to 1 inch. That, at the very minimalist, is what you would need to stunt a Harley, is suspension, bars, and risers. And honestly, I think you'd be good with that on a stock Harley. If you were on a budget, you'd still be able to get away with that. Now, that being said, you're also going to have to do some supporting mods. So one of the supporting mods being a oil pan mod, which you can't see right now because it's really dark in here, but anyways, you'd have to thread the pickup on the oil pan so that when you're doing long wheelies, you don't starve your motor. Even if you're not doing long wheelies yet, I still recommend doing that just because it actually helps your bike a lot. Because like even the standard design, if you're just to accelerate hard, it's probably starving the motor a little bit. So I don't know why they didn't make the pickup at the very back of the bike. I think they should have, but it is what it is. I'm not the engineer. Oil pan mod is a good supporting mod, and also a case saver. So I'm going to try to show you mine on my bike here. So Tracker Die used to make these. I don't know if they do or not anymore, but basically what that little piece does is saves your motor from breaking the front tabs over here where it mounts when you come down hard on a wheelie. So sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to mousetrap or whatever. You know, sometimes you just come down hard off a wheelie. You could potentially break the case tabs on your motor, and that's a pretty expensive fix and something that you don't really want to do. So I would recommend a case saver. And if you have the money, I would recommend, to eliminate that whole problem altogether, is you buy yourself one of these upgraded motor mounts right here. So this one here is a Chopper Haas motor mount. I went with that one because I personally thought it was really well constructed. I know Big Bear Choppers sells one, as well as Vulgar sells one as well. I think actually theirs is probably the most superior because theirs is not welded. It's all one piece across the front of the motor, all billet steel machined, I think, which is, as a machinist background myself, that's definitely 100% stronger than having 3 pieces welded together. That being said, Chopper Haas mount is still really good. I have buddies that run the Big Bear Choppers one, and that is really good too, apparently. I haven't ran that one, so I don't know, but I hear good things as well. So yeah, those are some good supporting mods to have. Now, if you actually care about your bike, you definitely want to get some crash protection. If you don't care about your bike, then fuck it, just send it. But yeah, some crash bars, Bunking crash bar. I got the shock sliders from them as well. These have saved my bike big time, numerous amount of times. Same with this thing actually, especially when I got hit a few months back before the end of the season. This thing saved my leg big time. I was able to bend it back a little bit. But yeah, crash bar helps. Cheap insurance for your bike. I think Cruzy Original sells like a K-bar one that goes kind of like around the motor, which seems like a pretty good design too, because it would save your tank a bit more. For example, if I didn't have those rear ones over there, it would definitely scratch my tank and the whole side of my bike, like my pipe, my shocks. So if you want to protect your bike, this is cheap insurance. Mind you, if you crash bad enough, it ain't gonna do shit. It'll do a little bit, but if you crash hard enough where you see your bike tumble down the road, chances are you did a lot of damage. And I mean, it is what it is. It's the name of the game. Sometimes it's gonna happen, hopefully not, but you just never know. Streets gotta eat too, right? After we got suspension, all that out of the way, supporting mods. If it's in the budget, I would recommend getting a seat. So I've been rocking a Saddleman step-up seat on this. If I could go back, I would have got a gripper tuck and roll, because it is a lot more grippier than this. I also would have wanted to maybe get it all out of gripper material because it's more durable as well. As you can see, this one is cracking. This is its 4th season that I've had this for, by the way. So I mean, I got a lot of good use out of it, but it's definitely time for a new one soon, I think. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of leaning to the Lepera. Lepera looks like they make a really nice seat, and I think that's what I'm gonna lean to. It also has like apparently a taller back that locks you in nicely, and yeah. Once again, everything is personal preference on these Harleys. So at the bare minimum, that's all you need to stunt. I see you guys with stock exhaust still stunting. Obviously a 2-in-1 looks nicer because it's not sticking out all the way back here. So if you want to upgrade that, definitely do that. Tires. So tires, if you're going to do rolling burnouts and stuff like that, I definitely recommend going with a Shinko 777 in the front because it's nice and sticky. This one is chooched. I definitely need a new one next season, but it served me well. I see a lot of guys rock these Shinkos 777s. I'm rocking the 100 by 90 by 19. I think some guys rock a little bit beefier setups. Like I think it's either 110 or 120. They go up a size and apparently helps quite a bit. For the rear, I recommend either a Shinko 999 or a Metzler 888 or a Dunlop 401. If you're just trying to learn wheelies and you don't care about doing burnouts and anything like that, you could just throw on a Shinko 777 as well, which will be a lot more grippier, might help you learn. But in the long run, not a good tire in my opinion for the rear because the 777s, they wear really fast because they're a softer compound. You also don't want to do burnouts on those because you'll probably fuck up your transmission. Once you get proficient at wheelies, you can switch over to a 999 or a 401, like I said, or a Metzler 888. I would honestly recommend just going right off the bat and learning with the regular 888, 999, or 401, just because you can still do donuts, you can still do burnouts on those, and you can also do wheelies on them. It's just going to slide a little bit more. But once you get the technique down pat, that shouldn't be an issue for you because there's plenty of guys out there that are wheeling dry rotted tires and killing it. All that pretty much, you should be able to wheelie. Like you don't even need you don't even need to upgrade your exhaust if you don't want to, because even the stock ones, they don't go out that far. But the rest that I'm going to mention on this bike is pretty much just like the butter, you know what I mean? Like I basically talked about the bread. Now I'm going to talk about the butter, you know what I mean? And the icing on the cake per se, you know, if you want to go all out and spend money. A couple other things that helped me with wheelies was buying some 1-finger levers. So I went with the Elite Mototech brand. I like this one a lot. Works really great. Gets rid of the whole bulky Harley Davidson handle. And you know, you can just 1-finger these and just pop it. Good to go. There's also RSC that makes a lever. There's 1-finger levers that makes a lever. There's Impact Tech. There's many different brands, I believe, and honestly, you just gotta find which one you like best. I run Elite on this bike, and then on my bagger, I have the RFC. I like them both. No complaints there. Grips, you know, personal preference, basically whatever you like best. I don't like 7/8 bars, but I also don't like the 1-inch standard Harley grips that come on because they feel really thick. So what I do is I stretch 7/8 grips, Renthal grips onto my 1-inch bars, and it's kind of like a happy medium between the two. So that's what I'm running on both the bagger and the Dyna. Works great. Like stuff like this is butter, like a fork brace. You don't need this to wheelie a bike. It looks nice, adds some stability to the front end. You know what I mean? So that's something that like typically you don't really need. I would recommend like upgrading your air cleaner system because the stock Harley one isn't the greatest. And also I would recommend venting your breathers so that way you're not puking oil into your filter all the time. Some nice grippy pegs would definitely help a lot just for when you're using the rear brake and keeping you attached to the bike. That's always blessed. These are my trusty Amazon $50 foot pegs. Honestly, I've been running these for a while now. I had a black set. I just replaced these to the red ones because my black set wore out from doing donuts. It just grinded down on the ends. And that's kind of my justification for going with the Amazon ones. They're actually really strong. I'm a 250-pound guy, so like if they can hold me, chances are they're probably gonna hold you too. Just they grip and they're easy to replace and they're cheap. So, you know, like why go out and buy like a $300 pair of pegs that you know are just gonna get ground down from doing donuts or dropping your bike or whatever when you're stunt riding. You know, obviously like when you become professional and you're not doing that on a daily basis, like yeah, get some expensive ones and rock those, right? But for me, I'm still learning, you know, so I still scrape my bike, as you can see by my crash bars, and that means your foot pegs are going to scrape too. So that being said, I just go with those because it's a cheap setup. Another benefit also of going Bassani 2-into-1 is that these new shorty pipes here are really a lot higher. So my old one would actually be like down here somewhere and it would scrape and hit the ground. Now I could actually drop this bike completely on the right hand side and none of this bottom part will touch at all. The only thing that might touch is back here if it tips over too much. But so that's one benefit of having a 2-into-1. Just cleans everything up. And also having a shorty one allows you to put taller suspension on, because I had the Road Rage 3 on before this and I couldn't rock 14-inch suspension because this part would be touching the pipe. But now that I got the shorty one, it's out of the way and it looks great. We're gonna go around to this side over here. So another thing I want to talk about is chain kits. Do you need a chain kit? The answer is no, you do not need a chain kit. But I will mention on why it's potentially beneficial. We'll talk about the pros and cons right now. So if you have an early model Dyna, the belt on those is a lot beefier, they'll last a lot longer. You can get away with a belt on an early model Dyna for a long time. On a late model Dyna, not so much. Chances are they'll probably break because they're not as wide of a belt in comparison to the early model Dynas. So I went with a chain kit on this because my theory is if the belt breaks, I gotta take apart this whole left side of the bike just to put a new belt on. You know what I mean? Versus if my chain is to wear out, my sprockets to wear out, I can literally just fish a new chain through here and I don't have to take off this whole left side of the bike. Plus it also won't leave me stranded if I keep up on the maintenance. So that's one thing when it comes to converting the chain. You do have to do a little bit more maintenance in comparison to a belt. A belt, you can just ride it and that's it. Chain, obviously you'll have to clean it every now and then, lube it up, and check your sprockets in the back, make sure the aluminum's still good. So yeah, it is a little bit more work, but in my opinion, I think it's superior to the belt. A lot of people are scared about breaking their inner primary if their chain breaks, but personally, I feel like you shouldn't really worry about that because if you're on top of your maintenance, you're fine. And on top of that, if you buy a good quality chain, you also don't really have to worry about that. To make sure the tension on them is good, you have to make sure they're lubed up well. You know what I mean? Like I have I think it's like 1 inch worth of slack is what you need. So yeah, that's you know, the benefits of a chain kit, obviously with the gearing, is that your bike's gonna lift up a lot easier. You know, like I'm running a 2453 on this. I would like to go 2455, but they didn't have it in stock at the time. But this just works great as well. On the 5 speeds, I think the ratio is 2451 that you want to run for wheelies, but I could be wrong. Somebody correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I'm running my derby cover over here to protect primary side from you know, getting all scratched up when I'm learning donuts and whatnot. That was a big thing to put on the bike. I also have my step plate for wheelies, you know, it just opens up more tricks and whatnot. This is a fuel injected bike, being a late model, so I don't have to worry about doing any modifications to the carburetor to be able to wheelie. So keep in mind when you have an early model Dyna, you're gonna have to do some mods to the carb for it to be able to wheelie, so it doesn't choke itself out and, you know, cause you to go straight on your face, which that's a pretty simple fix, you know what I mean? You could always just mod the carb, go that way. I also have a Thundermax on this, so Thundermax just tunes the bike on its own and allows me to change my rev limiter settings, versus on a carb bike you gotta get a dyno tuned, have some guy, you know, change the jets or whatever for whatever setup you're running in your motor. That's pretty much the differences there in terms of you know, fuel system. Obviously the pros and the cons. I think the carbureted eats a little bit more gas, and you know, you just gotta fuck around with it more when it comes to like elevations and stuff like that, versus EFI Pros. You don't have to worry about any of that, you just ride it. But the cons are, when something does fuck up, like say your fuel pump goes, or you know, something on your harness is screwed up, then yeah, that's gonna be a pain in the ass to diagnose. That's where a carb would be a lot more simple, right? And then basically now we're going to talk about motor setup. So a stock 88, stock 96, stock 103, all these bikes will wheelie. 88 will wheelie, 96 will wheelie, and 103, so on and so forth. It's all technique. These motors have more than enough power to be able to wheelie. But now I will outline the differences between the early model Dyna, the late model Dyna. So early model Dyna, pros. Timken bearing bottom end, which means your crank won't walk side to side. Has a 5-speed tranny, which apparently is more bulletproof than the 6-speed. I mean, like the 88 is just an all around bulletproof motor. The only downfall with the 88 is it comes with the spring-loaded tensioners in the cam chain, or in the cam chest over here. So that's something that you will have to, you know, worry about and probably replace ASAP, because you don't really want that to start causing problems in there. So now with the 07 motor like mine here, the con is that it does not have a Timken bearing bottom end in here. 6-speed tranny apparently is problematic, but I haven't experienced anything with that yet. I have 46,000 miles on this bike, and one of the pros with this motor is it has the upgraded cam chain tensioners, which means you don't have to worry about the spring-loaded ones. It also comes with beehive head springs in here, beehive style, which means you could run like a 574 cam and not have to worry about anything. But chances are, like before I do the cam chest on this thing and everything, I'm going to completely pull this motor, do a Timken bearing conversion, and also get the cranks welded, plugged, pinned, whatever you call it, to have a solid bottom end. So that's the unfortunate thing about Harleys, is the run out on the pinion shafts usually isn't the greatest. So if you want to make a rock solid motor where you don't have to worry about anything, what you got to do is eliminate all of Harley's basically weak points that they left in the motor, which in my opinion is the crank and the cam chain tensioners. So once you can upgrade the oil pump, the cam plate, the tensioners, you get a solid bottom end in there with a Timken bearing. That bottom end is going to be bulletproof. So you could go with Dark Horse, or you could just go with, you know, your machine guy around the corner that knows how to do it. It all depends on your budget, right? Like, everybody knows you can spend an arm and a leg on these things. It's basically all comes down to what you want to spend and what you want to get for your money. From then on out, it's, you know, whatever, the rest is just whatever you want, you know what I mean? Like, do you want to put billet breathers in there from fueling? Do you want to have fixed push rods? Do you want to have adjustable push rods? What cam do you want to go with? I know a lot of the stunt guys rock a 574 cam, or they go with Joey Wells's 567 cam, I believe it is, which apparently has like less engine brake, so it feels more like a two-stroke is what I've heard. You could also do stage head porting or whatever. The list just goes on and on about what you could do to these bikes. Like, it's never ending. Like, you know, I mean, you could get billet triple trees as opposed to, you know, cast. You could get billet wheels as opposed to cast, you know. There's a certain point, in my opinion, where you don't really need to spend any more money. I think personally, as long as you take care of all the important shit, you will have a solid bike, you know what I mean? And like I said, it all comes down to how much money you want to spend on it. You know, like, if you want to ball out. If you want to, like, be conservative, be conservative. Personally, I think with my bike, I'm gonna, you know, I think I'm gonna be in the middle. I'm not really looking to completely ball out with this bike, but I'm also not looking to cheap out on it, because, you know, your life rides on this. I want good quality parts. Good quality parts cost money, so you just gotta pay to play, right? As far as like aesthetics and stuff like that, I think my bike is done exactly the way I want it to look. I think the only things I would change is maybe like the gas caps, but I think my next priority is going to be the motor. I want to build that completely so it's bulletproof. I don't care about making more jam. This is more than enough jam for what I need. I just want it to be bulletproof. I just want it to eliminate all the weak points that are in it, so that I never have to worry or think twice. Same with the transmission. You know, I'd either go with a Baker, or you can send it to, I think there's these guys called 77 Cycles that fix all the weak points in the transmissions. After that, my plan is to upgrade the braking system. Braking system on Harleys, as most of you know, isn't the greatest. Especially a single disc Dyna in the front here, it's screaming for dear life on a roller. So I think my next plan will be to get a dual setup on here with some bagger Brembos, and then rock a big Al Cycle dual line to a Brembo RCS19. Yeah, RCS19 master cylinder. So that's my plan for that, and as well for the bagger, because I've heard nothing but good things about how those brakes work, and brakes are important. You could also do the same with the rear brake setup. You know, you can get better rotors, you can get better braking, you know, you can go with Brembo. There's so many out there, so many different brands you can choose from. But in a nutshell, if you wanted to budget build these bikes, you really don't have to do that much to make them wheelie. They will wheelie a lot, you know, just as is stock, and you just have to have the skill to be able to do it, right? Mind you, like I said, getting all these parts over time would definitely help with the process of the bike. But like I always tell everybody, everything is personal preference. What works for me, you may not like. You know, what works for somebody else, I may not like. It's like the great debate on who has the best engine oil. You know what I mean? Talk to one guy, he'll say Lucas Oil is the best. Talk to another guy, he'll say, you know, Royal Purple, or like, you know, whatever. It all depends on what's important for you. You just gotta do your research and figure out what you like best. And hopefully this video helped outline some things for you guys on what to do when you know, wanting to set up your bike for Harley wheelies and whatnot. if anybody has any questions, you know, feel free to comment, ask. Try my best to help everybody out with whatever they need. I'm not the master at this, but I've, you know, been in the game for 4 years now, and I've done a lot of research on stuff and learned a lot of shit by wrenching on these bikes and just, you know, Googling stuff and being obsessed with it like I always am with whatever I get into. So yeah, that's pretty much my Dyna build. I have a video farther down that like outlines everything completely, but hopefully this just helps you set up your bike for stunts and helps you figure out what you want to do, and just shows you that, like, you know, once you get a Dyna, all you really need is just suspension and a bar setup, oil pickup mod, and you could literally wheelie it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. I'm gonna have more of the bagger build series coming up. We're kind of on hold with that right now because we're waiting on parts that are taking forever to get here. So hopefully we'll have some more footage on that, and then once I get the bagger ready to where I'm happy with, I'll do a little breakdown video on that. Yeah, anyways guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions on the old Dyna, feel free to ask, and yeah, take it easy.